Week 3 is in the books. The man who I know has the toughest job in the building, and it's not close. Sarah, get home. We got our power rankings. Welcome to the show. And yes, we are brought to you by Energizer. Mike Am with you. The entire list of the rankings with analysis on every single team. NFL.com. If you're watching us, you can scan that QR code. Eric, you had made a comment. Very little makes sense right now. Please bear with us during this difficult time when trying to explain how you come up with your rankings. I'm telling you, I'm watching the Monday night games and I'm thinking to myself, I do not want to be Eric. This is impossible to try to figure out.
I hadn't written my intro at that point. I had written 28 of the 32 team reports and was sort of figuring out, all right, this is going to be great. I should be able to figure this out. About halftime of the games, I thought, well, let's rip this script up and start over again, because that's what I have to do every single week now, it seems. It feels a lot more chaotic and a lot more unsettled than a year ago, but you know what? We're all in. Let's go, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who's good, who's not good, some teams that I think are good that don't necessarily have great wins. There is a lot to digest here, but let's just jump right into the rankings. No change at the top. You got Kansas City, of course, coming up with a win against Atlanta on the road. We'll talk about that matchup a little bit later. Buffalo Bills, thrashing of the Jags on Monday night. The Vikings don't look now. How about moving up 12 spots to number 3? The defense holds C.J. Stroud, and the Texans just 7 points. Number 4, it's the Lions who beat the Cardinals. The Eagles, that defense handled a red-hot Saints team. You have the Houston Texans sitting at number 6. The Green Bay Packers at 7, and the Baltimore Ravens. Boy, do they need a win in the worst way. They got in on the road against Dallas, checking in at number 8. Let's start with the number 2 team here. I thought the Bills looked so good that there was an argument.
Yeah.
I thought we might come into the studio and say, hey, maybe we're flip-flopping here. We're going to talk about the Bills as the number 1 team. How much consideration did you have with maybe having them slot in front of the defending Super Bowl champs?
Oh, it was on the table, Mike. Absolutely. Yeah. I sat there and was watching them at halftime, basically, when they had done the bulk of their damage against Jacksonville, and, a team that was pretty desperate for a win, we thought, or at least be competitive in that game. And I absolutely considered it, but didn't want to be the guy who knocked out the back-to-back Super Bowl champs with a 3-0 record. I understand it hasn't been pretty completely start to finish in Kansas City, but they'll get going, I think. We saw last year they don't need to have a great regular season to be the best team when it all, ends and matters the most. So Buffalo has been terrific. I, sung their praises this offseason. I said, I don't think their Super Bowl window is over, and we saw it in the game last night.
I was in Rochester for inside training camp for NFL Network, and the biggest question was like, hey, how's this offense going to look? There's so many changes to personnel. It looked pretty good last night. By the way, next 3 for them, at Ravens, at Texans, at Jets. Stay locked in NFL Power Rankings, because we will find out where this team really deserves to be over the next few weeks here. The Vikings at number 3. We got to be buying this team. First time Minnesota is 3-0 since 2016. Sam Darnold is dealing. Just how surprised are you right now that you have them this high?
Yeah, I'm like the guy who got in on the Microsoft stock like in the late 2000s, right? A little behind on the party, but I'm willing to admit that I still am on track here, right? I moved them all the way up to number 3. I still had some reservations, right? We haven't seen Sam Darnold really dominate for a whole season. Do they truly have all the defensive pieces? Well, through 3 weeks, we have some pretty good evidence now. Not a complete picture, but a darn good one that this team isn't going anywhere. And I think what matters most, Mike, is the coaching. I mean, Kevin O'Connell has done a great job with Darnold, with all the new pieces. They've made the most of a great offensive line. And then Brian Flores on defense did a masterful job of C.J. Stroud. You're not supposed to blitz the guy, but that's exactly what they did and went hellbent blitzing him in the first half. And it really seemed to disrupt the timing of what can be a very explosive offense. I know the Texans haven't shown it yet this year, but so impressed with the Vikings game plan and their execution. It really was fun to watch. Also a nice game for Jonathan Grenard against his old teammates. It was a reunion kind of day for a lot of players, but he got to stand tallest in that one.
Yeah, look, they get the Packers, and this is going to be a great football game coming up this week. By the way, on Game Day Preview, if you're not checking out the show, Cynthia Freeland had said, hey, how does C.J. Stroud handle the blitz? Because generally speaking, he does a really good job, top 5 in the NFL with pressure in his face. It didn't play out that way. It just is sort of a remarkable feat that Minnesota was able to execute and look as good as they did. Well, Eric, another team that has actually been balling out right now is your number 5 squad, the Philadelphia Eagles. Take me through this, because I think for as much as we talk about Saquon and the offense, defensively, the fact that they were able to put the Saints in check the way they did, I think that's the most impressive thing that we're seeing.
Yeah, last week the talk dominated about Saquon's drop on third down and all that, and Nick Sirianni's decision, and those are fair topics. But the defensive discussion, I think, was a big one that we kind of overlooked. Right, it was a problem. They went into New Orleans, a team that had allowed the Falcons to drive right down the field for a game-winning score. They've had their issues. Their big guys up front hadn't shown up. And now they had to face a Saints team scoring 91 points in 2 games. Well, they did fantastic. I thought they were absolutely outstanding. Gave a little ground at the end there, but did what they needed to do to win the game. Reed Blankenship, the game-sealing pick. Davis and Carter up front really did a great job. Took away that Saints run game early. Kind of made them a left-handed offense. And yeah, I thought that as much as anything, not to overlook Barkley, not to overlook Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert, but that defense coming through really helped me feel good about keeping them high in the rankings. And, I think among the elite contenders in this league, even with their warts.
Eric, a couple of minutes ago, you told me about how impressive the Minnesota defense was against C.J. Stroud. I don't think anyone's hitting the panic button on the Texans, who fall 3 spots for you. C.J. Stroud hadn't thrown an interception in 7 consecutive starts. He throws 2 in this game. I'm not panicked, but is there a level of concern that you have around Houston?
Well, they still had to kind of integrate some of the new pieces like Stephon Diggs. I know Diggs was pretty busy on Sunday, but it ended up not helping them that much. And, look, some of the protection up front has to be better. CJ's allowed a bad game every now and then. I know he's been this sort of robotic superstar and played at an unbelievable level the last year plus, but he wasn't on his A game. They were down their top 2 running backs on the road against the team that we now know should be up there amongst the elites in the league. So is this the kind of game that changes our perception of the Texans? Maybe let's get a little more evidence. Let's see them a little bit more. I know that the Bears game was a little bit of a struggle offensively too, and they're still figuring things out. Remember, this team lost to the Carolina Panthers last year. They had some ugly games, even with the late season flourish there. So they'll get in their groove eventually, but right now, you're right. It doesn't look all that well jointed.
Eric, you made a reference to Microsoft stock. If I was buying stock in an NFL team right now, the Packers feel like a good dividend, consistently good here, move up 3 spots. They're at 7. I don't know. Is this more of a reflection on Tennessee, or are the Packers legitimate right now?
Hard to ignore that I moved Titans down to the basement this week, so I know that's a little bit of a teaser for later, but still, they're playing one of the worst teams in football, at least through 3 weeks, a mistake-prone team, but still got to credit the Packers defense for the 8 sacks. Still have to look at Jair Alexander's big pick 6 early in the game that kind of set the tone. And oh, by the way, we talked about coaching earlier with the Vikings. How about Matt LaFleur? The game plan that he devised 2 weeks in a row from Malik Willis kind of kept the training wheels on against the Colts, but I felt like loosen the leash a little bit and let him do his thing in his old stadium. I mean, Nissan Stadium had me saying, why do we have Levis instead of this guy, right? 1 month ago, he was at least competing with him. So a bizarre scene for Titans fans and a welcome one for Packers fans. They're 2-0 without Jordan Love. Love could be back this week. We're not sure, but this entire team is very well coached, very determined, and I think a real threat in the NFC North.
Would be a huge boost, as I made reference to. They get the Vikings coming up this weekend. On Game Day Preview, we had our insider Mike Garafolo with us. I couldn't believe we were actually having conversations about Jordan Love potentially returning. He is close, and to your point, Eric, there is a chance that he's actually going to be playing this weekend, which maybe even rises that stock a little bit more, with 2 teams now sitting in your top 7 going head-to-head. Time for Future Champions. It is presented by FanDuel, and here we go in the AFC North. I don't know what to make of this division. I still think that the Ravens are a really good football team. It's the Steelers that are undefeated. We'll talk about Cincinnati coming up, and a tough loss for the Cleveland Browns. The Ravens, for you, Eric, they move up 1 spot. Off air, I was asking you, hey, they're up, they're dominant, they're a good team, but once again, late in this game, Dallas made a run. I sit there and I say, hey, Cowboys were at home. They should have made that run, but you made a really good point. Flash back to a week ago where they were up against the Raiders and couldn't hold on to the lead.
Yeah. And it's been a chronic issue, Mike, something that you wouldn't normally associate with a team coached by John Harbaugh, one of the best, Lamar Jackson, 2-time MVP. And now they have Derrick Henry to kind of, bleed clock and take the air out of the ball. So the formula is there for the Ravens. They won a lot of football games, but recently, at least in the last few years, blowing leads in the fourth quarter has become kind of an epidemic. They came back in week 1 against the Chiefs, made it a close game, almost won it, but the last 2 weeks have been concerning. Even with the first 3 quarters in Dallas, which, look, to me, they look like a Super Bowl contender during their first 3 quarters. So how much do we weigh the Janus face of the Ravens, right? The good versus the bad, the early versus the late. It's part of the problem with evaluating them, but I had them pretty high last week. A lot of respect for an 0-2 team. That's why I didn't bump them up too much because of what happened in the fourth quarter. And, I already had them up there pretty well.
Positive sign here, and no one in the building is higher on the Ravens than I think I am. Derrick Henry went off in this game, and maybe there's something brewing here in this backfield. We didn't see it in the first 2 weeks, but Henry goes for $150 in this one. All right, more to come here. A week ago on Power Rankings, Eric had the Niners sitting at 2 despite a loss. Well, guess what? They lost again. There's a drop. How far did they fall in the Power Rankings? The answer is coming up next. Welcome back to NFL Power Rankings presented by Energizer. Here are Eric's teams 9 through 16. The Steelers, one of 4 undefeated squads in the AFC. The Saints, they sit at number 10. They averaged 45 points in the first 2 weeks, had 12 though this past weekend against the Eagles. Meanwhile, at number 11, the Seahawks 3-0 for the first time since 2020. The Niners, they dropped 10 spots after that loss to the Rams. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers at 13. He looks sharp on TNF. The 14th ranked team, the Chargers, Justin Health, a lot of concerns right now about his health. Checking in at 15, the Buccaneers, a head-scratching loss against Denver, and an impressive win for the Commanders, who are the 16th ranked team. Let's circle up on number 9 here, the Steelers. Eric, are they a good football team?
I think so. Yeah. Good. Yes. Great. We'll see. Right. Justin Fields and that offense have kind of taken baby steps forward each week. 0 touchdowns week 1, 1 in week 2, and then 2 this past week. And it just feels like they're starting to get a little rhythm. And I'm impressed with Fields' accuracy. This was not necessarily the player he was in Chicago at all times. He's still pushing it down the field occasionally, like that throw right there to George Pickens, and they get their medium shots in there, yards after the catch. Calvin Austin. That's really how they're generating big plays. Still doing it with the run game, and they lose their left tackle, and Broderick Jones steps in and does a pretty good job. The defense takes care of its business. You still have TJ Watt going against a rookie offensive tackle. That's going to be a win for the Steelers. So he's playing at an extremely high level. The defense as a whole is doing a very good job. Maybe they're taking advantage of the schedule a little bit, but I thought last week's win was or Sunday's win rather, was pretty impressive. So I still got this team moving up. Having seen a lot of Fields, I don't know if he's ever going to be special. And you got Russell Wilson in the pen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm still tuning in. They're interesting to me.
Yeah, that's becoming a juicy storyline. Russell Wilson won that starting job. We haven't even seen him start a game so far. If this team continues to roll here, I don't know what Mike Tomlin does. They are on the road against the Colts this coming weekend. Meanwhile, at number 11, the Seahawks moved up 8 spots. They also hit the road. They're an undefeated team, and they match up against the Lions. It feels like you're giving a lot of respect to this squad, to Mike McDonald's team, who, by the way, has looked dominant at times.
Yeah, there's no doubt they've done some really good things defensively. Granted, it came against Bo Nix in his first start. The Patriots are offensively limited. So, there's some things that we can put asterisk next to, but they're going to get Kenneth Walker back. They're going to get Nwosu back on defense. I do worry about the injuries to Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams and all that. Geno Smith was hot in the first half, cold in the second, so there is a little bit of a disjointed nature to what they are right now, but McDonald looks like a very good coach right now through 3 games. They've taken care of business. The schedule does stiffen. There's no doubt that the games get tougher from this point, and that defense will get tested, but I have a pretty good feeling in time we're going to see some really good things out of that unit, and I think McDonald was brought in just to be that guy. He just added more juice to that side of the ball. That's been the most exciting thing, is that things had gotten a little bit stale the last few years defensively, and there's really no problem in that regard right now.
No, by the way, speaking of that team's defense, I saw a stat which I was so impressed by. Seahawks first team since the 1979 Steelers to start 3-0 and allow fewer than 150 passing yards in those first 3 games. That secondary has been terrific. I couldn't wait to do the show with you just to find out where you were going to have the San Francisco 49ers. You drop them 10 spots. To be fair, and once again, and Eric, I know you know this, but who played for the Niners might be the biggest question. Injuries all over that squad. The Rams also had injuries, but make some sense of the ranking.
I probably should have factored in some of their injuries. Now, a few of them were late breaking last week after we taped the show, after I wrote the power rankings. But, I had Vikings fans saying, hey, we should have been up at number 2, and they should have been at number 12. Well, I pretty much fulfilled their dreams this week because I couldn't ignore it anymore. They get off to the 14-0 start against the Rams. Things are looking okay, but Brandon Ayuk doesn't deliver that huge game that we would hope he would be able to deliver in these kinds of situations. The defense gave up those long drives at the end. They were caught flat-footed on a fake punt that led to a touchdown. So, really all three aspects of the 49ers are kind of out of sync right now. If you go back a year ago, it was about this time where they had that weird little streak, the game in Cleveland, the game in Minnesota, where things just didn't look right. We're there now. Injuries are a big part why. I dropped them down. They can certainly get back into the top 5. We know their reputation. We know their talent, but you got to get Kittle back. We don't know McCaffrey's situation. There are a lot of unknowns right now, even with bench players like Juwan Jennings who could step up and have a 3 TD game. That defense wasn't dominant at all on Sunday, and that worries me.
Have an opportunity in what I would call a get-right game. They get the Patriots. At least on paper, they should handle business in a dramatic way.
Yep.
Time for Power Moves. It's presented by Energizer. Oh, the Commanders on Monday Night Football. That was a heck of a performance against Cincinnati. They move up 12 spots. They sit at 16. Jaden Daniels, Eric, I don't know if this is breaking news, but my Lord, the first three weeks of the season, this kid's the best rookie quarterback in the league.
Imagine completing 80% of your passes in your first 3 games in the league. A guy who is almost off the NFL draft radar, at least as a top 5 pick entering last season. So his ascension over the last, 12, 13 months has been pretty dramatic and remarkable to watch. And what struck me, Mike, the poise, the comfort level. He was out there looking like a seasoned veteran, manipulating the Bengals with his arm, with his eyes, with his legs, looked to be in total command, had the 1 sack at the end, didn't bother me. He picked himself right back up, got in position. They drove for 5 touchdowns in 6 drives, 6 scores in 6 drives. The only way you can stop him is in kneel-down situations. So they haven't punted in 2 games, Mike. This has been unbelievable to see. And I can't wait to see where he is at the end of the season, next year and beyond. This is a talented kid who's got all the confidence in the world.
Look, you're going to go wherever your quarterback leads you. Dan Quinn made some gutsy play calls, especially on that late drive there. 7 minutes, 12 plays, 2 third down completions, not to mention he went for it on 4th down, and they were able to pick up, obviously, the move the change there, which set up the Terry McLaurin touchdown, which, by the way, was
not bad for awesome. A college offense, right? Isn't that what the Bengals said?
Yes. There is a little bit of that. He had to eat his words. By the way, because the Commanders actually won that football game means the Cincinnati Bengals lost. They're sitting at 0-3. They might be the best 0-3 team in the league. Yeah, that's not really saying much. Where do they sit in the power rankings? The answer is coming up next. Power Rankings brought to you by Energizer continues to roll on. Eric's team 17 through 24. The Cowboys, 3 unanswered touchdowns in the 4th quarter. Not enough for them. At 18, the Colts, a heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor. At 19, it's the Rams. Yo, respect McVay in Los Angeles. The Falcons at 20. Oh, we're going to have to talk about that. Right behind them, Cincinnati, an 0-3 team at 21. Bo Nix gets his first win as the Broncos are ranked 22nd. The Cardinals, Kyler looking a little human against Detroit. And then the Chicago Bears at 24. Caleb Williams threw for 360, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Cowboys, I don't know what to make of this squad here. Keep losing games at home. There's a free fall that's happening right now. They dropped 6 spots for you, and they sit at 17. What am I supposed to do with this squad?
Yeah, I mean, some of Sunday, I think, was, if you watch, they just look so annoyed having to try to tackle Lamar Jackson, who just destroys NFC teams because they only face him every couple of years or that sort of thing. So, it sort of took away their defensive teeth early. They did settle in a little bit on that side of the ball eventually. Same thing with the offense. No big plays early, couldn't get anything going. Part of that, I think, has to do with the fact the run game, this sort of triumvirate they put together, hasn't been explosive. Cumulatively, they're near the bottom of the rankings, so that's been a limitation for their offense. And, you just can't put yourself in a 28-6 hole and expect to come back, even as good as they've been the last several years in Dallas. So, yeah, I think starting better, somehow forging a run game, and then, defense, just trying to defend these elite players like Lamar Jackson has been a problem.
Yeah. I started this show, Eric, saying how difficult it must be this particular week to come up with these rankings, but I got to push back on the Falcons at 20. PI late that wasn't called. I think they could have beaten the Chiefs, and if that had happened, they'd be skyrocketing up your rankings, but It sounds like you're not totally on board with Kirk Cousins in the squad just yet.
Well, yeah, I know there's a little hesitation there. I mean, they're still thinking of themselves as a running team, which I get when you have Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier and those offensive linemen. You should be, but they lose Drew Dalman in the game. They had a new right tackle as well. Caleb McGarry left the game, and trying to run that wide play on fourth down, I think showed. Look, when you're altered, when you have an injury like the double injury like that up front, you've got to sort of change what you do. And I think either quarterback sneak, something else. And just the offensive identity is not quite coming together for them.
Inconsistencies all over the place for a winless Cincinnati team that drops 5 spots. They sit at 21. Every single week, it just feels like a different issue with the squad, which really should worry Bengals fans who thought their team could win a Super Bowl this year if they were healthy. No 0-3 team has ever done that before. I still think there's a chance they're a top 10 team by the end of the season, though.
They could be. They're swimming upstream. There's no doubt. I mean, we've seen the record, right? 2.5% of teams that start 0-3 do make the playoffs, and the other 97.5 sit home. So could be 2 straight years for them sitting home because of the way they've started. That was the worst defensive performance we've seen this year. That was a major step back. They had no answers for Jaden Daniels. Really, the offense was good. I mean, they scored almost every time they had the ball. They just settled for some field goals, missed one of them. And they weren't aggressive enough early, sensing how much Jaden Daniels was going to stress them all night long. And I give Zach Taylor a little bit of heat for that.
Yeah, 1 touchdown and 3 trips into the red zone, those 2 field goals. That really is the difference in this ball game. Eric, I want to get to your teams ranked 25 through 32. The Dolphins, no Tua. They drop 8 spots. It is what it is. We'll figure this team out once they get healthy. At 26, it's the Browns. Watson sacked 8 times. You got to be kidding me. G-Men's defense rolling. 27, it's the Patriots. Outgained by the Jets 400-139. Not going to win a lot of games like that. The Raiders at 28. What in the 29, the Giants. 30th, the Jaguars. The Panthers at 31. And the Titans at 32. All right, the Jags. They couldn't get anything right in this game. I don't know what the fix is. I don't even know how you fix it because it feels like everything's broke with this team.
Yeah, and a lot of people in Jacksonville seem to be kind of putting the spotlight on Doug Peterson, and they've lost their last 8 games with Trevor Lawrence as starting quarterback, and they've lost 8 of 9 overall. We know the collapse down the stretch and the slow start this year has been so disappointing. Trevor Lawrence right now is a 50% passer. You see him forcing balls into traffic, not necessarily trusting his new receivers or his offensive line up front. It was a tough night for him trying to get in rhythm, and he just sort of felt like he had his teeth taken out of the offense.
Yeah, just definitely a buzzkill, and this team is knocking on the door now of a couple long trips. They got a couple games in Europe, so they got to figure this out very, very quickly as they drop 7 spots. Number 31, I need to give you some love here. Panthers, you actually picked them to go and win this game against the Raiders. Andy Dalton, hello.
Every dog has his day, and Andy Dalton, I mean, I'm the dog, not Andy Dalton, but I picked him as a dart throw. Look, Andy Dalton has been great in these kind of situations, showing the world he can do it. I just thought he was a better quarterback than Bryce Young right now. He's a sort of a pro's pro in a lot of ways. And he had nothing to lose in this game. Neither did the Panthers. You saw renewed energy that just wasn't there with Bryce. So as great a day as it was for Andy Dalton, Dave Canales, it was a tough one for Bryce Young, but good for the Panthers. They're out of the basement for the first time in forever.
Yeah, and look, I did not see it coming on the road for them against a Raiders team that scored what I would consider the best win of last weekend. Dude, you got to handle business better than that at home. I get it. It happens. It's the NFL, but definitely a buzzkill from that perspective. Eric, good luck this week coming up with the rankings. We'll do it again coming up after week number 4. Enjoy the games, everyone.